Today we're now covering the Plains Indians. So we're going to be talking about the next Native American group. And on your assignment, you're going to have 3 different things you're doing. So the very first thing that you're going to do, you can see that number 1, we're going to fill in the first column on the Buffalo Uses worksheet. So you're going to click here on this Buffalo Uses. And then it'll pull this up. And we're filling in just the first column right now. So remember, you have to click Edit Presentation, Edit Browser. And then when it pulls up, I usually have to zoom in because on mine I can't see it very well. It comes up very little. So once this pulls up, then you click View, Zoom, 100%. Then we're going to look at, it tells us the Plains Indians were so resourceful that they found a use for virtually every part of the buffalo. In other words, nothing was wasted. See how resourceful you can be. Look at the diagram of the buffalo and think of how you could use the following parts of this enormous animal. So again, remember, we're filling out just this part right here. So we've got a diagram down here of what the different parts are. And up here, you're going to do 1 through 14, telling what you could use it for. So like the hair of the buffalo, what could you use that for? And to put your answers on, you have to click Insert, Text Box. Remember, it always ends up in the middle of the page. You pull it up to where it says hair, you put it there, you click, type your information, and then you click to go to the next one. And you have to click another, insert another text box. Once you complete just the first column, then you'll click Close, and then you can see that you need to be watching this video. So as you're watching it, we're going to be filling out notes. So this is note sheet here. As you're watching me go through the lesson. Then after you fill out your note sheet, you're going to go back to the Buffalo Uses worksheet, and you're going to fill in that second column of what they actually used the buffalo parts for. And then finally, once I have completed giving the lesson, then you will go to worksheet 17 and you will complete that. So on worksheet 17, you're going to be copying and pasting some pictures from the internet. So you'll click Edit Presentation, Edit in Browser. And then when it pulls up, this is where we'll be putting information onto the worksheet 17. This one will be after you've watched the video lesson, after you've filled out the note sheet, and this will be kind of a recap of what you learned. So it says read the labels above the boxes, and then it says draw a picture of each item. You won't be drawing them. You'll be copying and pasting a picture into there. However, if you would like to draw them and then take a picture of it and send it to me on Teams or in an email, that will work as well. So you're either copying and pasting a picture of these 4 items into there. So like for lodge, we would look up, you know, once we get done watching the video, you would type into here, photo of a lodge, and you'll want to make sure that you do it after the lesson to make sure you're getting the correct image, because as you can see, there's lots of different things that pop up, and you want to make sure you're putting the right thing in there. So you're going to copy and paste a picture, put it there. Same for teepee, travois, and sod. So either copying and pasting a picture into there or drawing a picture on a different piece of paper or printing this off and drawing it in there and then sending a picture of that to me in Teams or email. And then finally down at the bottom, you're going to choose one of these items that you drew or found a picture of. And then you're going to write a sentence or 2 describing how the item was made or used. And once you have your 4 pictures and then your sentences, then you'll click Close, and you'll make sure that you have your note sheet all the way filled out. Make sure you have the Buffalo Uses all the way filled out. Make sure you have worksheet 17 all the way filled out, and then click Submit. So go ahead and open up your worksheet 17. Or not the worksheet 17, no, I'm sorry. We're now going to open up the note sheet as I get started on the lesson. So on the note sheet, you can see we have different things here. We're going to talk about the buffalo. We have something we're going to talk about one of their shelters. We're going to talk about this contraption, talk about them being farmers and hunters, and their government and traditions and religious belief. Now, again, make sure you click Edit Presentation, Edit in Browser. And as I go through this, you'll be needing to add in text boxes to add the information. So again, remember, you click Insert, click Text Box, and then you drag it to wherever you need it. And now, if you're needing to pause the video so you can type the information, I would highly suggest doing that. So if you're trying to type in, what they use the meat of the buffalo for, you're like, wait, slow down, Mrs. Askew, then you can just pause my video, type what you need to, and then resume it and continue. So as I'm talking, you'll be filling this in. So we're looking now here, the Great Plains Indians. So here's a picture. This is actually them stretching out a buffalo hide to be able to use it for different items. So the first thing, just picture this as I'm reading it. If you need to close your eyes to picture it, you can close your eyes to picture it, but just put yourself in this situation. The sound of thunder wakes you, and you quickly sit up. But this isn't really thunder. You feel the ground rumbling beneath you. Only then do you know that the sound you are hearing is the pounding hooves of thousands of buffalo running from your tribe's hunters. As you listen, as your mother and your grandmother talk about the hunt. Soon there will be fresh meat to cook and dry. Grandmother has even promised to make you a new pair of moccasins or shoes from part of a buffalo hide. And so there's a picture of a buffalo. So we're going to talk about life on the plains now. So this is the life that these Plains Indians experienced. So the Plains people lived on the interior plains between the Mississippi River and the Rocky Mountains. On fields of grass, they hunted buffalo or American bison. After water, buffalo were the plains' most important natural resource. If you remember, the eastern woodlands' most important natural resource was trees. And so the Plains Indians' most important natural resource is buffalo. Millions of these animals once roamed this large region of dry prairie land in North America. So now on our map, I'm going to show you where this region was. So if you remember, the eastern woodlands was from the Mississippi River east to the coast. So this was the eastern woodlands. They relied on the trees. They're hunters, farmers, fishers. And now our Plains Indians go from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. So this area here is where the Plains Indians were. This is where they were using the buffalo. So the buffalo had many, many different uses. They used, the skin, the bones, the horns, the hooves. They didn't use just the meat. So if we look at this picture, this gives us some of the many, many, many different items that they were able to use. So on your note sheet, as we're talking about these different items, I want you to fill in at least 2 things that each of those body parts were able to be used for on the buffalo. So like looking at the hair, so putting down a couple of these, they used the hair in headdresses, so different things they wore on their heads. They used it for halters. They used it as saddle pad filler, so filling in the saddles to make it more comfy, more squishy, more comfortable to sit on. They also used it to fill pillows. They used the hair to make rope, and they used the hair for ornaments for different decorations. The beard was also used for ornaments for apparel and weapons. And then their favorite part, the best cut of the meat, was the tongue. That was the part that everybody wanted. Everyone wanted a piece of the tongue of the buffalo. They used the skull for prayer ceremonies. So they would use it for, different parts of the ceremonies and as headdress. And then the horns, which are actually hollow, they use those for cups, to carry fire, as spoons, as a powder horn, which means, when they used a gun, they would put the powder in there and hold that for the gunpowder. They would use the horns as ladles, toys, signals, meaning like, when you blow into a horn, it goes boom, and headdresses. They even used the brain. They would use the brain to prepare the hide, meaning they would use the brain to turn the animal skin into something they could use for, teepees or clothes. The raw hide was used for containers, shields, buckets, moccasin soles, belts, headdresses, medicine bags, drums, ropes, saddles, stirrups, quilts, knife cases, armbands, bullet pouches. So the animal hide was able to be used for a lot of different things. The muscles were used in glue. The sinew, which is a part of the muscles, was used for the bows, thread, arrows, and cinches, which is used to tie up things. The meat they ate pemmican, which is a type of meat mixture. The hump ribs, so they would eat the ribs here. And then they would also make jerky out of the buffalo meat. The buckskin was used to make moccasin tops, cradles to put babies in, winter robes, bedding, shirts, leggings, belts, dresses, pipe bags, quivers, which is what holds arrows, teepee covers, gun covers, pouches, and dolls. Then they also used the tail. They would use the tail for decorations, as a fly brush to brush things away, whips, and as a medicine switch to put medicine over the people who needed it. They would use the fat as soap, and they would also use it as cooking oil. The skin on the hind leg would be used for moccasins or boots. And you can see here it says it's pre-shaped, meaning it's already in a shape that they could use easily to make the boots. The bones were used for knives, arrowheads, shovels, scrapers, winter sleds, war clubs, splints, game dice. They even used the bladder, which they made little pouches and bags out of it to hold stuff. They used the stomach as buckets, cups, as a dish, as a cooking pot. And then the hooves they would use to make glue. They would use it to make rattles. And then finally, another important resource would be buffalo chips. And a buffalo chip is dried buffalo poop. And it was the kids' job to go collect the buffalo chips to make the fires. Now, these buffalo chips were really good as a fuel source. Even if it was raining, the buffalo chips still stayed dry and they burned really slowly. So they were actually an excellent source of heat for, when you needed a fire to stay warm, and for cooking because they burned slowly. The buffalo was a huge animal. It's the largest land animal in North America. Some of the males can weigh as much as 2,000 pounds. And today, most of the bison live in national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, or on fenced, privately owned lands. So again, make sure you're filling in those boxes around the buffalo. That describes what those different body parts could be used for. So now we're going to talk about their housing. So the Great Plains people built shelters that were easy to move. Since they followed the buffalo herds, they had to be able to pack up their homes and move wherever the buffalo went. One such shelter was a cone-shaped tent called a teepee. To build a teepee, wooden poles were set in a circle, tied together at the top. Then the poles were covered with buffalo skins. A hole at the top of the teepee let the smoke out of the fires. The people also carried their wooden poles to make a carrier called a travois. A travois was made of two poles tied together at one end and then fastened to a harness on a dog or a horse. Goods were carried on a buffalo skin tied between the poles. So you can see here they have two of the poles from the teepee that they've attached to a harness. And then they took either the buffalo skin or they would use different types of ropes to use to carry the different items. So they built the teepees, and then when it was time to move, they would use travois to carry items and carry their homes to the next place they were going to live. Some of the Plains Indians also lived in what's called earthen lodges. So these houses were made out of what's called sod, which is dirt with the grass on it. And what they did is they dug a pit in the ground and they built a wooden frame out of sticks over top of that, and then they covered it in sod. So these are what the earthen lodges looked like. So you can see the outside, how it just blends in with the grass, with the terrain, because they used that sod. They used the grass over top as the covering. So this is what sod is. You may have seen sod, if you're digging dirt, sometimes big clumps of the grass stick together because of the roots in the dirt, and that's what sod is. So you can see the inside of one of the lodges. You can see how they use the wooden frame around it, and then you can kind of see where the sod is over top of it. So they typically lived in teepees, but they also had what was called the earthen lodges, those lodges. Now, some of the things that they also grew, because they also did farming, not in addition to hunting the buffalo, they also did farming. So they grew sunflowers, and then they also grew those three sisters. Remember, the corn, beans, and squash. Here's a really great picture that shows where they have the corn growing. And if you look, you can kind of see the bean plants growing up around the corn and the squash growing beneath it to keep down the weeds and keep the soil moist. So they did farming in some of the places. They grew the sunflowers, corn, beans, and squash. But then they also hunted deer, elk, and buffalo. So the buffalo was their main source just because you could get a lot from the one buffalo. So it was like a one-stop shop. But they did also hunt deer and elk. So on your note sheet where it talks about farming, you can put down that they grew sunflowers, corn, beans, and squash. And then where it talks about hunting, you can put down that they hunted deer, elk, and buffalo. And then as far as their government, the different tribes each had their own groups within the tribes as well. So for the most part, most of the groups within the tribe got along. You know, like we talked about with the Iroquois, it's kind of a similar thing where they had the council where all the chiefs of the different tribes would get together and talk about any kind of issues. So on your note sheet, you see where it talks about government, you know, the groups work together. And the really cool thing is that anybody could be chief. You did not have to be born into a certain family or hold a certain power. You know, as long as you proved that you could take care of the people and that you'd be able to provide for them, then you could be the chief. Now, as far as their traditions and religious belief, a lot of what they did pointed back to their gratefulness for nature, how they really appreciated that what nature had to offer and how it took care of them. So their ceremonies showed that respect for nature. And then also having those ceremonies and something to celebrate gave them unity, gave them a sense of being together, being one. You know, think about sometimes, you know, with Christmas, you know, it's just kind of that feeling that comes with it typically, you know, that feeling of everybody just looking forward to something, and just that feeling of everyone celebrating the same thing brings that sense of unity. So on your note sheet, make sure you're putting these down. So now make sure you have both columns on that buffalo uses sheet done. Make sure you have your note sheet completely filled out. And then now you'll go back and you will fill out worksheet 17. That's where you're going to copy and paste the pictures of the 4 items or draw them and send them to me. And then write a sentence or two describing either how it was made or what it was used for. And then once you get all 3 of those completely filled out, make sure you click submit. And again, if you ever have any questions or anything you're not sure on, send me a message in Teams, send me an email, or send me a message on Remind.